And good evening, everyone, and welcome to another post-season edition of Tuesday Night Live. I'll hand you over to Peter J, our host. How are you going, Pete?
Very well, thanks, Fane. Thanks very much for that. And welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday Night Live Crowcast. Great to have you all along. Another absolutely huge week in the AFL. Of course, trade week started this week, and so just a massive amount to talk about, of course. Our very own Adelaide Crows in the centre of news over in Melbourne at the moment with all the trade talk. So we'll throw to Nikki's news, but I think we all know where it's going to be heading, Nikki.
He's slowing the music.
We got him again. I tell you what, hey, Fane, I'll help you out. What I'll do is, just while you're doing that, I'll just remember to, I forgot there in my haste to introduce our special guest tonight, Corey Wade. He is the
That's what AFL... I was waiting for.
Oh, sorry, mate. Well, we're very, very professional here. He's the AFL writer for Over the Line Sports, and we're very, very lucky to have him on tonight. Corey, how are you tonight?
Yeah, great, thanks. Thanks for the invite, and yeah, hopefully I can provide some sort of help and and don't embarrass myself too much.
Well, you must be thrilled already to see what a professional outfit you've joined up with, and
it's looking that way.
Yeah, it is.
You talked it up all week as well. Oh, it's a Tuesday, so you talked it up yesterday.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit better than normal at the moment.
Oh,
right.
Come on, do you have my music or not, Phoenix?
Begin with the music, mate.
There we go. Now we feel like we're actually motoring along now. So basically, it's trade time. But I'll actually start with some really nice congratulations to Belinda and Rory, who got married over the weekend. They seem to have a very lovely time, so well done. But we've actually had our first two trades. Well, one's a free agency move. So we've got Wells has agreed to go to Collingwood. North didn't throw a spanner in the works whatsoever. Rumoured $1.5 million for 3 years with some performance base in the last year. But it's only going to give them, I think it was pick 32 as their compensation pick.
They'd be a bit disappointed with that. I know Brayshaw was talking up the compensation.
Yeah, so that's kind of interesting. Oh, and Vickery also, and Vickery actually has a better compensation pick than what Wells does, so that's kind of interesting. And then today we finally had a trade go through, which hilariously basically meant that Cam McCarthy was only worth 2 points in the way that the points actually system works out. So let's see if I can remember what numbers they are. You guys might have to help me out here. So Freo handed over their pick number 3 to GWS because they totally need first-round draft picks because they've never had enough in their whole time. Then they got 7 back. And
33.
I think 33, and what was the later one? Was in the 50s or something, I think, or was it 50?
51 or 61?
It was about 72 or something.
Yeah, so the pick values actually worked out to, the pick 3's worth like 2,362 or whatever, and the 3 picks they got back, or 364, and the 3 picks they got back were 2,362, which then meant the 2 extra little points left over was Cam McCarthy.
Can you just run through that again?
I'm trying to do numbers. I hate you. But it was kind of interesting that he just really seemed to be steak knives, and they're really cheap steak knives.
Pretty good deal from Freo,
yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Oh, both parties are really happy from all reports. The way I look at it is GWS wanted to get into the draft early because they've got a surplus of points as it is. So this is essentially a free pick from the 2016 draft pool. So I think from reports and what GWS have said, they're hoping that McGrath is available, who had an outstanding TA Cup Grand Final, who got best on ground. So it's hard to see him being available at 4, but yeah, GWS will be hoping that's the case.
And it'll be interesting because I think a lot of people were hoping that the teams in front of them were going to bid on some of their academy players to force the hand of GWS. So this is actually quite cunning on GWS's part to get in there early enough that really they're not going to be forced to use that very early pick. They can get somebody who they want first off, and then others will start playing funny buggers.
Yeah, the first bit's probably not expected until 10 to 12 at the earliest. So Harry Perryman and Will Setterfield are the two that probably that 10 to 12 mark.
They're just continually in a good position, aren't they, GWS? It's amazing.
Whoever runs it is a master at working it all out, isn't he? They always manage to give away the players they don't want, the picks they don't want, and end up with the ones that they really need.
I'm calling him the turnstile of the AFL at the moment. It's one first round pick out and another one in.
And they actually did quite well, I think, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, Corey, that when they picked their initial squad, they really did load up with as much high-end talent as they could. But they also then got in some nice senior players to complement them to actually help mentor them through. So they actually did a lot better than what Gold Coast did. But I think they knew they were going to get raided. So they deliberately picked so many in lots of different positions so that they could lose some, but not lose their overall quality.
Yeah, they've got a fantastic spread all across each line. It's hard to really see fault in any of their lines. I think the key, like you said, has been the players they poach from the other clubs. So they really went for guys who were probably just about to come into their peak of their career, like Callum Ward, prime example. Obviously, one close to home for us in Phil Davis. Their experience, whilst still on the younger side of AFL age groups, has been probably paramount to their success.
Just on another one of them, the Daniel Wells one. It's an interesting situation with Collingwood because they have a stated youth policy this year, and they take on board it. And admittedly, he's a free agent, but a guy at 32 and give him a 3-year contract. It seems at odds with their youth policy.
I think their PR department aren't talking to their list management and their coach.
Yeah, it's now not at all for Buckley, and he's going for it all guns blazing, I think. So it'd be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I reckon you're right. I think he's going with it all guns blazing. I think the youth policy's out the door and he's trying to save his skin.
Most definitely.
If I can steer us just to the Crows for the time being. Obviously, we're heavily in the news, and I might just combine that with a very, very early nomination for a Cock-Wombling Num Nut of the Week award for myself.
Oh, here we go.
And I actually got the news or information about the Bryce Gibbs wanting to nominate us for a trade on Sunday night, and was told that it was a done deal. Very, very reliable source, and it was just I got it tweeted out, and so that was good. And then I got into work the next day and thought, I've probably got a couple of days before this really breaks, so I'll just do a few things I've got to do around the office, and then I'll eventually get this out. And I got it sent off to Fiend and said, look, can we get this one up, because pretty important stuff. And yep, no worries. And I sort of I had a look, and it was about 11 o'clock, and I'm starting to see some information come through, thinking, this story's starting to get a bit of legs. And so I said, look, have we got that one up here? And then it turned out that my email wasn't working, and so the story didn't get through. And by the time it did, the story had caught fire, of course. And so it was ended up being live up on crowsfancentral.com about half an hour after it was released by the Adelaide Crows. So absolute dipshit of a amateur journalist there, I have to say.
Well,
we could have been the newsbreakers, Pete. We could have been the newsbreakers.
Mate, we were the newsbreakers. We were sitting on the big story that nobody else had.
Oh, who wants to do the Marlon Brando? I could have been a contender speech.
Yeah, that's right.
I could have been a contender. Anyway, I thought that was a bit of a way to introduce the Bryce Gibbs scenario, and also
that
the
is
dual
a fair
purpose.
nomination.
The dual purpose of nominating me for this week's prize, and no one's going to beat that because that was just idiotic.
Well, you do it. I reckon you got.
No.
There's a challenger.
Oh, yeah.
Hang on, let's leave that until the
Till
appropriate
later.
segment. But it's good that you sort of fell on your sword, and I was a little bit complicit in that, Pete, because you did tell me that you sent me something through, and I didn't bother checking until it was too late, and then we sort of back and forth for about half an hour trying to get it to work.
Corey, as you can see, mate, this is a first-class outfit that we run here.
Yeah, and on that, I've got to call it a night. Sorry, no.
So what else have we got, Nikki, on that front before we head into the Crows
Well, just
stuff?
quickly, Collingwood's going to be interesting because Wells has been confirmed, but they're also apparently quite into Maine, and now Rockcliffe has been thrown into that. But I wonder if that's a little bit more on the side of his manager trying to get people interested or to jump at Rockcliffe because his position seems to be quite untenable up at Brisbane.
Yeah, that's what I thought too, that it was a bit of a manager's push to pump up the dollar value a little bit because he's going to have to take a pay cut to get where he wants to go. No doubt about it. He's not. What is he on at the moment, Pete? 700 or something, or 800 back-ended or something?
Yeah, that was the word. It was a back-ended contract, north of 700.
Yeah, you'd imagine 600 is about his cap.
Well, it's 800 for the year that's to come, but that is the last year of a back-ended contract.
And it all depends on what Brisbane want to get for him as well. If they fork out a bit of his wage for the year, then they may get a higher draft pick. So a lot of that comes into it as well. A lot of back and forth between the club going to and Brisbane themselves. So a lot more to play out, I think.
Just on Rockcliffe, also Maine is actually an actual contract, Nicky, to Collingwood. I don't know what everybody else here thinks, but I'm still very keen on Rockcliffe, and we just might be able to pick him up at a bargain price, maybe like a second round and a player. So I don't know whether anybody else thinks that might be a possibility, because Brisbane will get nothing from him at the end of next year.
Well, you've got O'Meara to Hawthorn, you've got Mitchell to Hawthorn, you've got Prestia to Richmond. Caddy is now mooted to be on the move to Carlton.
In exchange for Delidio.
In exchange for, Delidio.
Richmond, you mean? Richmond.
Oh, yeah. So that little move around there. So Rockcliffe is kind of on the outer in terms of the moves that are happening. So there's not that much interest. And I think we seem to be playing it quite well. And this is now leading into Gibbs with how on the front foot Reid got and pissed off Carlton, and that was delightful. And that's kind of also put a little bit of a rocket under Brisbane in a way, and Rockcliffe himself is like, yeah, you want to come to us, but we've got other fish to fry, and we're not doing it if it's not at the price that we want, is the way that I'm looking at it.
You think that it's still alive as an alternative, Nicky?
I think it is, and I think it's more of benefit to us the longer it goes on, because Brisbane have really shown that they want to get rid of him. And as PJ's just said on the chat, that every day for the last 2 weeks, Brisbane has said that Rockcliffe's going to chat with Fagan, the new coach, the next day. And it hasn't happened yet. So they really don't want to talk to him yet.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to talk to them either. I mean, it's a two-way street there.
I think this is a good lead in to maybe start talking about the Crows a bit, given that we are heavily in the news. I think there's absolutely no doubt that Rockcliffe's still in play. And I think that, obviously, as you say, Nicky, we've got the deal to do with Gibbs, which I understand will happen. And I think that Carlton are just stage managing at the moment. They're just throwing out ridiculous names and just leaking that to the media. And just effectively putting a little bit of a show for their own fans, and that will eventually go through with a statement saying that they had to do the deal because they had a lot of other deals dependent upon that one. And then I think that you're right. I think that Probably what we're hoping is that Rockcliffe just basically gets left on the shelf, and we might be able to come in, in the second week and scoop up a bargain.
Well, that's what I'm hoping anyhow.
I think Gibbs is a good selling point to Rocky as well, if that was the case. So, I'm happy to a little bit of the future for us as a whole, because Gibbs on his own really pushes us to a top two spot, which we were a win away from this year. But that could be the difference to take us to that next level, because the ball use that Gibbs is going to bring with him and run, and it's just exceptional. And obviously he wasn't a number one pick for a reason. He was a number one pick for a reason. So huge step in the right direction.
And my dad will be happy because he taught him. So that's another Crows player that he taught.
Not football though, Nikki.
No, he spoke quite glowingly of Bryce as a young man.
They say he's dumb at school. Did you say your dad taught him?
He also taught Scott Welsh, and he said he didn't teach the Germans, that they might occasionally attend a class.
I was going to say, I'll never admit to that.
Because there's no way to teach it. Oh, and Vardy as well. Vardy's another one that my dad has taught.
Your dad really copped some bad ones.
He did.
So what do we think that the Gibbs trade is going to go now that I think that we can dismiss some of the ridiculous claims that have been made through the media today? But what do we think that's going to settle at?
Well, it's very interesting that we've had a couple of mouthpieces, so to speak, like Theo from Channel 7, who we know definitely has links with the club and has actually dropped information prior. And he was very strong early on that we don't want to part with pick 13. So I wonder if we're going to help facilitate something with another club to help Carlton get that midfielder that they want, because that's what they've talked about this evening.
But without a second rounder, Nikki, how do we do that apart from using our first rounder?
Well, that's where Lions comes into it, I think. Gold Coast were quite heavily into Lin Jong, and that's fallen through now. So I think they were quite keen on him before that also. So he may fall back into that early second round draft pick, because GWS need established players.
I think you're spot on, Corey, and I think that the way to do this is sending Jared Lyons up to the Gold Coast and seeing what it would take to shake Pickett free, because he's come out and nominated Carlton, and I think that he's perhaps the kind of player that they might have been talking about. It's going to be, he was a high draft pick, so it's going to take a bit to shake him loose out of the Gold Coast, but I think that Jared Lyons is the starting point. And if we can shake Pickett out of the Gold Coast, send him down to Carlton, and I think that may be how the deal is done.
Sorry, which player is that you're saying? To Carlton?
Jared Pickett.
From the Gold Coast.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Pickett from Greater Western Sydney.
Yeah, the young bloke, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was thinking he's a Gold Coast player.
No, not the Gold Coast. Well, there's a gala at...
Gala, that's who I was thinking of, sorry.
Yeah. No, it's Pickett from GWS.
Yeah, it's somebody on the board described that Silvani seems to like his GWS trading cards. It's just turning Carlton into, GWS Light.
They're the players
and
that
it comes back to...
They're the players that Carlton have got to end up with, Marchbank and Pickett. And so, I guess it's finding some way to get those players down to Carlton.
And there was a reason why they were those top 5 picks in the first place anyway, when GWS took them. So, it's not like last year where Sauce really took what he could to top up Carlton's list. These guys are quality footballers, and will add to Carlton's future.
The latest language out of Carlton has changed a little. In early days, it was, indignant and almost as if he's going nowhere type thing. But the latest type talk is talking about that Gibbs is going nowhere unless we get midfield replacements. And they obviously the boys you're talking about there. So if we do get involved in that, Pete, what do you think it will cost us to help that happen?
Well, obviously, pick 13 is obviously got to be put on the table, I would assume, to get players of that quality. And then I would imagine we would be looking at what we could get for Jared Lyons, as Corey said, for some draft currency, and then to see if we can shake a player loose with some of that currency is, I imagine, where we would go.
In other words, I think Gold Coast have got like 20 or 21, haven't they? And if we could get a hold of something like that, then that and maybe a player could be used to get Rockcliffe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've discussed this for a few weeks now, and certainly we were writing about it up to about a month ago that, that ridiculously low offer that was put to Jared Lyons, and the fact that there were clubs circling for his signature. So I think that we've probably resigned ourselves to losing him, and the fact that he's going to be a bargaining chip, and so I think that if we can get something in the early to mid 20s for Lyons, then I think that then sort of paves the way for us to do a little bit of damage and get some trades done.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is that everything you said is correct, and everything that's going on seems to point down the fact that we are trying to trade Lyons, whereas Lyons keeps saying that with the right money he wants to stay in Adelaide.
I think it just shows that we don't rate him, Mako. It's clear that we want to use him as a bargaining chip, and whilst I think at the end of the day, we'd be happy to have him in our side, we understand his trade value, and the only way we could actually pry him loose is to lowball him, because otherwise he'd probably sign and stay on.
Yeah, that's very obvious, but it's the interesting thing is that he still wants to stay on, even though he probably knows we're doing this to him.
Because his partner is from here in Adelaide and she's not keen on moving.
Right, so it's a domestic situation, Nikki.
It absolutely is. She has
Yes.
a well-paid job here, has no interest in moving whatsoever, and even if Lyons is traded out and takes a position at another club, he'll end up having to commute for the relationship.
Gotcha. Yeah,
I
well,
was having a conversation.
Sorry, Corey.
I was having a conversation about this today with another Crow supporter I frequently chat with, and it seems to have changed with the game itself. So partners and wags are having a lot more say, and it's going hand in hand with how soft the game is becoming to a degree.
It amazes me, they've got, and I'm not being disrespectful to players' wives and girlfriends, but they've got spouses who have a limited time earning capacity, probably far above what many of them will earn outside of football. You would imagine that there are certain sacrifices that can be made for the short term. And, if the guy needs to go over to Victoria for a couple of years to earn an extra $100,000, I know if I had a partner, that I don't think they'd give a damn.
And just to turn that back a little bit, though, yes, they've got that very short time period. So that then means that after their career is over, the major breadwinner then becomes the partner. So should they actually sacrifice them getting ahead for the far future for a very short-term gain?
Sword.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that each relationship is different. They know what worked for them, and they've got to figure it out what's the best way to go. I mean, I myself actually moved interstate and overseas for a partner at the time, and I did that to the detriment of my own career for a little bit. But that was my choice to make, whereas I know others who let a relationship go because their career ended up being more important.
Yeah, but if you take the situation though, Nikki, if the guy's playing football and he's got 6 or 7 years ahead of him, and he can get paid $400,000 a year, that's $2.8 million, and that's going to make up for a lot of detriment.
You don't get that back. A lot of that goes in tax, my dear. Remember?
Yeah, well, we pay our tax, we still end up with maybe about 1.8, 1.9 or something like that, and it's still a lot of dough.
Yeah, and I actually think I would hate to see Jared go. We had a great chat with him earlier on the year. By all accounts, he's a really quality individual and he's been so loyal to our club. But I think what we're doing is we know, as you said, Phoenix, we know he's got value. We would quite happily keep him in the team, but we also know that other clubs are very interested in him. We want to improve our
His
list.
manager was saying
This is what we're going to do.
Up to 6 clubs are into him at the moment. His value's not going to be this high again.
No, and
I do take that with a bit of grain of salt.
Yeah, but even if it's 3, that's good interest. And
yeah,
I think a lot of people when they assess Jared Lyons, they're a bit harsh because to me, add a yard of pace and a bit of power through the core, and he's a genuine A-grade midfielder. He's not far off it. He's got all the tools, and I would say that Bryce Gibbs is a class improvement on Lyons because I think they're quite similar players in many respects. It's just that Gibbs is a bit better at it. So, Jared's
got
a bit
more
unfortunate.
size to him.
Yeah, Jared's a bit
well,
unfortunate in that regard. He just lacks that yard and lacks a little bit of power. But as the back end of a midfield rotation, he's more than serviceable. I wonder whether he ends up at the power. Do you reckon that might be a possibility?
You wouldn't do that to him, would you?
poor
He
bastard.
wants to stay in Adelaide, and he's quite happy to take maybe AFL average, and particularly if Port Adelaide get rid of Hartlett, maybe we do a swap lines for Hartlett. I don't know.
That does make sense, though, what you just said, because pride is a problem, but neither club really likes to take one from the other these days. But it does make sense in terms of being able to stay in Adelaide and still play AFL footy.
Yeah, the trouble, I guess, is that we want a second rounder, and that's where Jared's value is for us. We want to get back into the second round, and he's the obvious ticket. The only other blokes, really on the table are Cameron Ellis-Yeoman, who has probably only third round at best value, and then we're down to Mitch Grigg, who could probably go as a delisted free agent, and Ricky Henderson, who's pretty much in the same boat.
What happened to the 3 suitors for McKay that were reported in the advertiser?
They were making things up. They always do.
It's funny you mention I was tweeting with Anderson from SEN today, and he dropped McKay's name as a possible Gibbs package deal if it were to eventuate.
Done.
So I found that interesting considering, Melbourne media were talking in that light. So, who knows what's going on there. Every name on the list has been thrown around.
Just moving to, as you say there, Corey, lots of names being thrown around. One name that has surfaced is, just over recent days, is Harry Deer, uncontracted, and not happy for his name to be thrown around. But I also, there was a bit of a rumour floating around about Tim O'Brien, who was the first-round pick in 2012, which was the first year of the Tippett sanctions, who we were supposedly going to draft with our first-round pick. Just wondering, some of the rumours about whether Hawthorn may have changed its mind on the father-son issue with Harry Deer and whether we may be lining up a swap there. I wonder if that's possibly on the cards.
Well, North apparently were the ones who are very keen on Deer.
Yeah, I heard Hawthorn too. We're also a bit keen on him.
In tomorrow's team, though, Pete, where does O'Brien fit in? I mean, he would be up against the same issues that Harry Deer would be up against in terms of selection. And whilst from our perspective, he's probably more a ready-made player than what Harry is at this stage of his career, do you think Tim would be happy coming over and playing second fiddle?
When he's more likely to get games at Hawthorn.
Well, is he though? I don't know. I mean, but the point is that we've got to have some kind of. It's like the ruck situation, with Jacobs. We've got to have some kind of a succession plan because we can't just assume that Walker and Jenkins are going to play forever and not be injured at any time.
Yeah, that confused me with people on the board who were like, oh, yeah, we'll get rid of him for this. And I'm like, we've delisted Loudon and we've also got rid of Ramsey. Yes, Ramsey was on the rookie list, but he was one of those we could upgrade with a long-term injury, and he's a swingman, so he can play forward or back. So we've lost 2 out of the forward line. Really, the only tall forward in the SNFL left so much is Harry Deer. And he's really good quality.
I'm a big fan.
Oh, huge fan of his. Just his size, his speed, his agility, and his aggression.
Yeah, I like him.
If it wasn't for
who do you get in?
Yeah. If it wasn't for being the 2 inches shorter, probably not that much, but that little bit shorter than Jenkins, I think you'd really push him for that backup ruck sort of forward role, just purely for the fact that the way he attacks the ball, and he's good in front of goal, and like I said, his agility is quite good for his size as well.
We have actually used him in the SNFL in the ruck when we've had injuries, like when Loudon was out, and I think Hunter was actually injured at the same time. So we know that Harry can do it, and he wasn't too bad actually going to the ruck. I mean, yeah, it's SNFL level, but they've actually got some decent ruckmen at that level.
It's interesting then from a list management perspective that we did ditch Luke Loudon so quickly, given that we've only got 2 genuine rucks on the list. You know, as you say, Nikki, not only did we knock out Loudon and Ramsey, the guy that we retained is actually uncontracted. So you would think that there has to have been some discussions behind the scenes, either that Harry's going to get a contract when the TPP situation for the club is a bit clearer, or that there's been some discussion, as Pete mentioned earlier, about maybe a swap of some kind with O'Brien or perhaps somebody else in a like-for-like situation, because otherwise it leaves the club in a pretty precarious position from that perspective.
Yeah, I always thought that as soon as we got rid of Loudon and Ramsey, and I think we said this last week, I was sure the club had a plan. They had somebody they knew they were going to get to replace them.
Yeah.
Most definitely. I think that is the case with Deer. We wouldn't have gone so gung-ho getting rid of Loudon. Mind you, has he really done much to warrant staying on the list, even in a rookie capacity? Granted, he's had injuries, but I think there's more to play out with Deer, and we see him as an untouchable.
Yeah, him and McGovern, I think, very much are that long-term future for our forward line. I mean, even McGovern, I think the club think that he can play anywhere, but I think Greenwood might take his play anywhere spot.
Corey, were you saying you think that we might be doing something with Deer?
Not that I know. I'm just saying, based on our list changes to date and the depth chart that I put in my article on the website, I think it went up yesterday. We probably are good short still, so I can't see us moving Deer on unless, like I said, we've got a succession plan, someone coming in, but then we're leaving ourselves short with the potential ruck, because I can't see O'Brien rucking if that were to be the case.
And he's also, and the thing is with Deer as well, is that he's very happily up in Bali on holidays at the moment, and I think a few of those players who are interested in moving haven't gone on their holidays yet. That's not to say it won't happen, because it's easy enough for him to get on a plane to come back, but
really,
a lot of them don't go till after things get sorted.
I mean, if we look at it logically, the only contracted player that's expressed a desire to or being open to moving is Ellis Yeoman, who's done it via his manager on the back of wanting AFL minutes, and he said basically he's happy to stay, but ultimately he's after AFL minutes. So, aside from our uncontracted players and us having forced the situation with Lions, Ellis Yeoman's really the only other one in play, and you can't see much happening with our list apart from those 2 players, I would have thought.
Well, Ellis Yeoman, I would think, is if there is an attempt late in the piece to get hold of Rocky, Ellis Yeoman would, in my opinion, would definitely be part of that.
Spot on,
Yeah, you'd
Macca,
see the
because
writing on the
Brisbane
wall.
was certainly after him last year. So they were sniffing around Cam last year, and so unless their position has changed dramatically, I think you're right there that there's a potential that he could be involved if we go down that path.
Yeah, see, I think we could possibly get Rocky late in the piece with a pick 20 plus Cam Ellis Yeoman.
Yeah, I agree, Macca. I think that's the move.
I'd love it to happen because that would be then put two real quality players in the mid.
And for Brisbane, considering how deep fielders bat in this year's draft, they've got the potential to pick up quite a few talented kids and really cement themselves in a good position for that 3 to 5 period that they'd be setting themselves up with. Their spine's fantastic at the moment. Obviously, it's quite young and raw, so like the whole team will be. But yeah, they'd be planning for that 3 to 5 years and give themselves a good slingshot with the draft this year with a few extra picks.
Corey, that actually brings me to a question I did want to ask you, and I know that it's a favourite area of yours, and that is that when we have these discussions on trades, we talk about the draft picks and we throw them around like they're, just numbers on a piece of paper. Pick 13 and pick 21. And from your perspective, what does it actually mean for Adelaide? Potentially losing those picks, and what's in the draft this year, and also next year as well, because the potential for us to be using future picks, and also just maybe you could lace that with how it impacts with the potential of Ben Jarman and Jackson Edwards as well, because I know that that's also a topic which is close to your heart.
Yeah, I think 13 this year for us, if we were to keep it, there's quite a few options. Unfortunately, my favourite of this year is Tim Taranto, who's midfield forward. Probably, I don't know if you guys watched the All-Stars match a couple of weeks ago, but he was one of the best on ground. I think he had 29, 30 touches across the game and kicked a few goals. He's a real smooth mover with the ball in hand. He's quite effective going inside 50, so he's one of my favourites. Probably another option would be Jack Scrimshaw, who's a Grant Birchall type, which I think would be key for us with pushing a Laird or a Smith up the ground to a wing more permanently. His intercept marking and reading of the play is exceptional. It's very similar to Laird, but he's probably got an extra 6'4" on Laird alone. he's quite a big guy, so yeah, they're a couple of guys that I think would be around that mark at 13, which really interests me. As for next year, Jackson Edwards is a real hot prospect.
Is he likely to be a first rounder, Corey, you reckon?
At this stage, I'd say he would be. He's not doing anything to prove otherwise. So, we might have to stock up a few points to make that happen next year if we were really keen on him, which I can't see why we wouldn't be at this age.
Corey, where do you see young Jarman? Third round?
Yes. Yeah, probably mid to late third round. I'm not a massive fan of it. Like, yes, he's a Jarman, obviously, but I'm trying not to get caught up in the romance of it all, which a lot of our supporters seem to be at the moment. Considering, like, if I had to choose between he and Jonty Scharenberg at the moment, I'd be going Scharenberg purely for the fact that we're getting the same type of player, but with a little bit more height and size to him, and that's the only knock on Jarman in this draft. If he had another 3 or 4 inches, he'd be top 10 to 15 with ease.
Scharenberg's a bit quicker, isn't he, though, as well?
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, they're still very inside mid-dominated, but Jarman's more of a sort of wily forward pocket, half-forward type, where Jonty plays pure inside mid.
And Jackson Edwards, Corey, do you want to perhaps talk us through him?
Yeah. Well, we played 10 games in the under-18s this year and finished runner-up in the best and fairest. So for Glenelg. So that says how well he's played or how well he's going with the game at the moment. And the Tigers under-18s aren't the easy beats. They're a quality side. I'm a Glenelg supporter as well, so it makes it a bit easier for me to enjoy that. Not that we get to enjoy much. Yeah, I'm trying to find his stats before. I've got all of his stats on a USB that I couldn't get here in time, but probably a little bit bigger than his dad height-wise. Obviously, he's got a lot to fill out before he becomes AFL ready, but he's not even in his he played underage football this year. Well, he's an under 16, but played a lot of under 18 football. Outside of that, off the top of my head, I didn't write down a lot. Sorry.
But he would be a good two-footed player.
Yes and no's like left footers. Still a little bit of work to be done. But his general thinking and really his work in traffic, should I say, is what I was looking for. Is probably one of his biggest traits, I think.
That's what I've noticed about him in the limited amount of time I've seen him. It's just his composure and close.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you. Yeah, no, he's really composed. He's got very good spatial awareness as well, which I think gives him that little bit of extra time to use the ball well.
So to be you'd imagine that we're going to need a second and a third rounder to probably bid for him. Corey, is that your read?
Yeah, most definitely. It depends on how his year goes as well next year, but at this time, probably that 10 to 15 mark.
Which probably means then that it's quite important for us to hang on to a first rounder for next year, which means that it wouldn't be involved in a Rockcliffe trade, for example. You'd imagine that a second and third rounder would be required for Jackson. So if we don't have a first, then we're pretty much out of the draft.
Well, yes and no. I think depends where our first is as well. So like if we happen to go very well this year.
Pick 18.
Yeah, pick 18, exactly.
That'd be nice. That'd be acceptable.
Yeah. But if we're sort of floating around that 10 to 15 mark, then it's that real Russian roulette we're playing with future picks now at the moment, especially coming into having our first real crack at a father-son, unless we throw caution to the wind this year and go with Jarman.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting insight, mate. I really appreciate it, but because I think that we really have to look at these two, or we can't look at next year in isolation, or this year in isolation, I should say. Sorry, we can't look at this year in isolation when we've got potentially a really high quality father-son pick coming up next year, and we may need to have some ammunition to get that done.
Now, just as kind of like an overall thing, what do we think so far with Justin Reid now in charge of our list management and basically what he did with that little interview?
I like it. I've got no problems with it at all. We've been real tread on
proactive
eggshells with a soft foot. Not been on the front foot before. We've been seen as that club that's happy to sort of take whatever comes. We've not really pressed the subject as such. So I'm really happy to see that.
I just thought it was kind of interesting because I think we've probably got an inkling of how this is going to pan out and why I'm quite strong on the Rockcliffe that we're waiting till the end, because think about what he's kind of done regarding contracts and the way he's played hardball and quite happily let it pan out for a little bit longer to get eventually kind of what he's happy with for the club.
You'd imagine that Reedy's whiteboard is a little bit more detailed than Nobes might have been in the past, simply, like you say, Nicky, because of his background. He'd have a pretty good read on where everyone sits in terms of contracts and, contract status and all that sort of stuff, payments and whatnot. So he's dealing with a fair amount of intellectual property, I reckon, and the value of his appointment is going to really show over the next couple of pre-seasons, I think.
And on that, I mean, when he came to us, he was actually heading up the AFL division for Elite Sports Properties. So he wasn't just managing Bryce Gribbs, which is partly what pissed off Carlton, because they said he's been in his ear for a long time. Well, yeah, he was his manager. But he was actually in charge of 7 other agents. He was overlooking them, which is all of ESP's talent list. So he would have so much knowledge of all the list managers and the way they work as well within the clubs.
Not forgetting that there's been a few defections from ESP as well that have gone on to other agencies or formed themselves their own as well. So, you're right, Nick. Maybe it's John Reid that got annoyed that we missed out on Bryce early on, and so he groomed his son for player management just so that we could get him back eventually.
Just on Bryce Gibbs, and what the task that Reedy's got in front of him, he's got a little bit of one difficulty is the fact that there's a little bit of emotion around the loss of Gibbs by some of the Carlton stalwarts, such as Buddy Kernahan, Bleating, and other ex-Carlton players saying he's a Carlton man through and through, leave him alone, blah blah blah, don't trade him. So I just think there is a little bit of pressure on Carlton to try and get perhaps overs out of us if we do take him.
Did Kernahan say that?
He did. Kernahan cried like a stuck pig.
That's very interesting because there's talk on the board that Kernahan's actually, because he's good friends with Ross, that he's actually kind of tactically approved this and is pushing for Carlton not to hold it up.
Tip that one upside down.
Yeah.
That's what was said. Kernahan was really bleating that the club should just say go away. We're not trading him.
Pete,
or is that another case of the PR going on?
Pete, is it out of order to mention your thoughts or your information regarding the initiation of this whole transaction?
No, that's fine. I can. What the information that I got is that Carlton initiated this, and it related to 2 issues. Those being probably obviously salary cap issues and also trade currency issues. So those were the 2 primary issues. Now, so my information was that yes, Carlton initiated it with us, in fact, I actually, the information I initially got was that Bryce was probably going to have to not so much be talked into it, but certainly wouldn't, wasn't necessarily sort of the initiator of it, if you want to put it like that.
Which means that a lot of this is just playing out in the media. I mean, if that's correct. It
absolutely is. Sorry, mate. So just continuing that, there's no doubt in my mind that this is being, as I've said before, stage managed, and that they're looking offended, and they're selling a story to their members and to their supporters, and that it will eventually it'll all fizzle out, and the trade will be done. But so that was the information I had from what I'd term as a tier 1 source, if you want to put it like that, someone that I would say is pretty reliable.
Well, and hence why they got so annoyed that Reid dropped the bombshell on Monday. So that
messed up with their stage managing. Absolutely right, Nikki.
And I think he knew that's what they were going to do. About. And so we went, we're not going to play that way.
Put it this way, the person that gave me that information was the one that I got a message from them late this morning saying that don't worry, Mitch McGovern will not be traded. That is absolute solid gold. And then a few hours later, his manager was out saying that no, he's not going to be traded. So he gives pretty reliable information.
Nice.
So what do you think it will end up with it? I mean, we're going to lose pick 13. There's no doubt about that. But do you think there'll be steak knife sweeteners or something solid, or what do you think it will cost us?
In some way, shape, or form, we'll lose 13 in Lions, I think.
As part of this deal, or as something extra?
No, as part of this deal, I think.
Yeah,
Lions won't go to Carlton, though, will they?
No, he won't go. I doubt he'll go to Carlton.
Yeah.
So we need another club to come in. But I was looking at our list earlier, and could we see Jake Kelly come up in talks at some point?
Jake Kelly, was that?
Yeah,
Yes,
Jake Kelly.
Yeah, I wondered about that.
Quality attack on the ball is really, you know what you're going to get from him. Obviously, skills are probably his letdown for him. But yeah, it's hard to get a read because his development obviously is there.
He has
But
worked
could
really
he
hard
be
on
one?
those skills.
I did a bit of
most definitely.
I did a bit of a list analysis on our defence today that we posted up on Crows Fan Central, and it struck me that Jake was really the outlier in our whole defensive portion of our squad. We've got a couple of old stages in Otten and Shaw that, over the 27-year-old mark and hampered by injuries and whatnot. And then our core really sits in the 23 to 26 category. And then of the youngsters, the up-and-comers like Doody and those blokes, Jake is really the outlier. He seems to have everything without having anything that really sticks out and forces his name in front of the selectors. And it struck me as interesting that he was upgraded last year and he's been retained, I feel, as a bit of an emergency situation. I wouldn't mind betting that he's on the way out next year, simply because I can't see how he pushes his name in front of the selectors in front of some of these other players.
Well, Carlton are going to lose Tui, so that might be that Kelly could have an opportunity there.
Son of a gun from Collingwood playing at Carlton.
Yeah, wouldn't that be beautiful?
Yeah, that'd be hilarious. I mean, he's contracted until the end of next season, but you just, if someone came knocking this season, you'd obviously do it, I think, but I can't see it. I don't see that he stays on the list given our current makeup. He's not quite tall enough. He's not quite skillful enough. He's not quite quick enough. At times he's lacked composure when he's had AFL games. I don't know. I just don't see him forcing his way in. We're pretty strong in his little portion of the defensive squad, and I just don't see him pushing himself in front of some of the others that we have.
He's not of that nice size, though, as being in between.
He's 189.
Yeah, you look at this season and you get, say, I don't know, I'm friends with a lot of other supporters from the team. If I took them along to a game and then spoke to them a week after and said, right, who did you notice more in our back six? But 8 out of 10 times would be Tom Day.
Yeah.
Without doubt. Intercept marks, creates run, uses the ball well, composure's there, and, he's 2 centimetres shorter and probably 6 or 7 kilos lighter, but he just plays, it looks like he plays a lot bigger than what he actually is.
Yeah, he does play tall.
Yeah. If it come to it, you'd see him probably playing 2017 before Kelly.
The only player that I see Jake Kelly replacing potentially in our current 22 is Kyle Chaney. And as you rightly point out, we've got Tom Didale lined up for that slot, you would have thought. So Jake then becomes the emergency player in that slot because you don't see him playing as a third tall, and you don't see him playing on small forwards. So really it's Chaney's spot or bust, and yeah, I just don't see it for Jake, unfortunately.
Just for curiosity, Cheney's uncontracted, isn't he?
Correct.
Well, apparently,
Well, it hasn't been announced yet.
yeah. And as PJ pointed out earlier, our club likes to keep things in-house and doesn't announce things till they're ready to.
So you're saying that he has been given a contract?
No, I'm saying it's actually no proof that he doesn't have one because we haven't heard about it. That's just the way the club's going at the moment.
PJ on the chat asked whether we're going to offload Otten. I don't think we can afford to, PJ, because we simply don't have enough cover in the tall defensive posts. And whilst he's shorter than both Kyle and Talia, Kyle Hardigan and Daniel Talia, really with Sam Shaw being, dodgy at best, Otten really represents one of our few remaining tall options in case of emergency. So I'd imagine he goes around again.
And he's also, you can play him up forward as well as down back.
Exactly, yep. He is a bit of an emergency break glass situation, and I bet you that the club would be pretty hopeful that a pre-season into Alex Keith gets him up and running, because he's the obvious next key position defender.
Yeah.
Keep Otten on for another year, keep Shaw around for another year if he gets up from his concussion issues. But we don't have much apart from that, so Andy Otten stays in, at least for this season.
And Henderson, has anybody heard what Henderson is planning to do?
So
Get
far,
married.
no.
I think either way, yeah.
Yeah, there's no kind of noise about him as to whether anybody's interested.
Well, certainly nothing happened in the free agency window for him. So I guess we'll just wait and see what will
that's
happen.
still open.
Yeah, but I would have imagined something would have happened a bit sooner than now, Nikki. If it was going to go that way, I think he'll end up just sailing through to being a listed free agent, and someone might pick him up then.
Well, what happens in that regard? Because I don't reckon we'll voluntarily delist him, Pete, to be honest.
Well, if we were going to retain him, we would have given him his games to meet his target for being recontracted, because he certainly, I mean, if you take his game against West Coast, for example, in round 23, he certainly deserved to get another game.
Yeah, but the only thing is, Pete, is by not and maybe there's better dollars inside that contract, whereas if outside that contract and with nobody wanting him as a free agent at the moment, and we do decide to keep him, well, then we might put him on a very base salary.
Well, we could make it.
That was my thought.
We could do that.
Well, we've got him. I don't know how this works. Someone else might be able to tell me. But he had a trigger for 2017. But even though he didn't, accumulate the games in order to activate that trigger, do we still hold the option for 2017?
Don't know.
No, I wouldn't. Well, unless it's written into that contract, but we don't if it's not written into the contract.
Yeah, essentially he's a restricted free agent. If it's made on him, we can match it like the normal process. If not, at the end of it, we can look at giving him a new contract, but it won't be on what he was before. It'll be a completely clean slate and a new deal.
Yeah, so being an RFA essentially means that he's uncontracted now.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So I would imagine that we'd try and hang on to him if there's no interest, rather than delist him. He's probably more value on our list than somewhere else.
Yeah, well, if we did keep him, it'd be on a very, very base salary. So that's not really going to upset the apple cart, is it?
No, we can certainly keep him on if that's how we feel about it. All right. Probably should just rule a line under that now, and because we're getting close to full time in Tuesday Night Live, and we will have time, of course, for a very, very quick roundup of the Cock Bumbles for the week. Nikki, did you want to take us through that?
Is he going to play my tune again, or are you going to make me just go straight into
my bloody thing's not working now.
That's no good. You got to have the song. Come on.
Was
Get it
working
together,
before.
Phoenix.
Something's happening. Just talk amongst yourselves for a moment.
Run through them, Nikki, and it'll play over.
Well,
you
you've
go.
obviously got. Here we go.
Underground, overground, wombling free.
Worth a wait,
Well-
surely.
Totally. So Pete's nominated himself. I also thought a nomination for the Victorian media, who last year were all, the Crows, Dangerfield's homesick. We've got to let him come back. The Crows can't play hardball. That's too mean. Bryce Gibbs wants to come back to Australia. Oh, we need to change the rules straight away because that can't happen.
And blokes like John O'Brien coming out and saying this is going to be the trigger. It's just
I know,
incessant
stupid.
noise from the Victorian media. And I mean, I don't disagree with the premise that the players have too much power in the whole system as it stands at the moment. But the hypocrisy from one situation to the next is almost laughable.
It's ridiculous. But I think the winner has to be finally Michelangelo Rucci.
Yes, that was my nomination.
After his Monday performance of putting up the story of how the Crows really want Bryce Gibbs, but Carlton and Bryce isn't interested. And then an hour later, out comes Justin Reid going, oh yeah, Bryce has asked to come to us. And he had to edit it and change it.
Well,
And
and then
that-
the edits were even more laughable. So you just,
Yeah, Brad Crouch and
Lever
Oh, no.
and
and
right,
Lever.
laughing. Apparently,
Yeah.
Stephen Silvani laughing was, what is it, or
yeah, I
whatever
find
we
that hard
offered.
to believe.
Yeah, I know. I find it hard to believe Rucci actually knows what's going on
13
in
and Lions
sauce.
originally.
Well, I think
Yeah.
it's interesting that Rucci was so out of the loop in the interim in the initial story, and then all of a sudden he expects us to think that he's in the loop when it comes to a private meeting between Justin Reid and Stephen Silvani, to the extent that he knows that Silvani laughed at something. Rucci wouldn't know what bloody days is at the moment.
I think
So we're saying that it's the award winner this week is the Battle of the Journalists. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
They're all pathetic.
Tell you what,
Although
you
one's
pumped up
getting,
your own
one's getting
tyres then,
paid for
Pete.
it. One's getting paid for it, I hasten to add.
Very true. So I think we do kind of need to give it to Rucci. I think he deserves to, at some stage, get a nomination and a win this year.
Yeah, okay, we'll do that.
absolutely. We got to tell the guy to get his hand off it.
Well done, well done. I'd tweet it to Rucci, but he's blocked Crowcast's Twitter account.
He's
That's-
blocked me as well. Yeah, if it wasn't already, I would be now.
I gave him a couple of truth bombs, and he doesn't like truth bombs.
I think it's probably
No.
the fact that we have sources and he doesn't. Even if ours is kept in the cupboard and not in the fridge.
He was
Corey,
trolling
yeah,
me
you're
about
saying-
Dangerfield, so I trolled him about Caroline Wilson, and he blocked me.
Oh, he doesn't like it. Funnily enough, I got delisted asking him if he'd booked his tickets with the Port players for after the Gold Coast game to start their holidays, and he blocked me over that. So
He's got
Well, if
thinner
you
skin.
weren't
He has
blocked
thinner
before,
skin than
Corey,
Donald Trump.
if you weren't blocked
Seriously.
before, mate, you'll certainly be blocked by associating with us. There's no question about that.
I
guilty by
would have been
association,
I would have been blocked after the first article he released. Inverted commas.
Just before you wind us up there for the night, did anybody else see Robert Walls on the radio?
No, because it's on Double A, and why would I listen to that?
Well, no, listen to Robert Walls, who was actually an ex-Carlton man, and said that Carlton should do the deal because he thinks in the long run will be to their benefit because they're not going to win a premiership while Gibbs is there. So he's at least got his head screwed on right about that. But he mentioned young Menzel that came from Carlton to us. And he said, I noticed he never got an A-grade game. He said, good luck with him. He said, the reason he was no good here was because he's so lazy. And he said, he's a very lazy player. Good luck with him.
Well, he hasn't watched
That
the
was-
SNFL games because he's not a lazy player when he plays for us.
Yeah, that wasn't going to get much traction with Nicky Macca, no doubt about that.
But I mean, irrespective, Nicky, you can't deny the fact that for a bloke that got traded in for a second rounder to essentially not play AFL football the following season, it is indicative of some fairly deep seated issues, and you know, good luck to him if he's working on turning that around and all the rest of it. But it's probably not out of order for Robert Walls to make that comment.
No, I thought it was very much in order, actually.
Fair enough.
That's
All
well
right, well, look,
documented, yeah.
that takes us to probably just a little bit over the hour, so it's been great to catch up with everybody and have a chat this Tuesday night. We've been very humbled to have somebody with actually a little bit of credibility in Corey join us tonight. It's been great to have you on, mate.
No, take it easy. Thank you.
So really good
You've
to
seen
have
him
you
on
with
Twitter.
us.
It's not that good.
And hopefully, if we're lucky, we might be able to rope you in for another couple of shows leading up to the draft. Would be great.
Yeah, no doubts. I'm actually heading to the combine, the state combine on Saturday, so hopefully I'll have some reporting back of the SA kids from there. So yeah, I'll try and knock something up.
Only
and
problem
report
is,
it live.
Nice.
only problem is, Corey, you might complicate the show with facts.
I'll
Yeah,
try
there's
and
a-
keep it.
That's
Yeah.
normally my job, Macca.
There's
That's what I meant. Exactly what I meant.
I just about got through this show without shaking my head at something you said, Nicky, and then you've blown my mind right at the end there.
All right, thanks everyone for joining us. We appreciate you all listening in, and thanks to Nicky Macca and Fiend for being good sports and having a good chat and bringing all the information to the Crow supporters out there. Great to have you joining us, everybody, and we'll look forward to catching you again next week on Tuesday Night Live. And in the meantime, you can catch us on Twitter at Peter J. Crows, or you can log on to crowsfancentral.com, and a couple of really good articles there
Hang on
for
a
your
minute.
reading pleasure.
Yeah,
Hang on a
that was
minute.
his
You
own
don't-
Twitter.
You don't get to promote your own Twitter account on this program.
Well, everyone can have a go. Come on.
AFL Crowcast for Twitter, AFL Crowcast on Facebook. Thank you very much. No, yeah, AFL Crowcast on Facebook, crowsfancentral.com for our learned, esteemed colleagues' writings and some of mine and a bit of Corey as well. And yeah, if you feel inclined to follow Pete's personal Twitter account, there's a lot of good cat stuff on there and, you know, laughing puppies and that sort of stuff.
All righty. Okay, thanks very much, everybody. We'll catch you next week.
Night all.
Farewell.
See ya.